We are live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Truth Proof. And great to be here again, Les. And how are you?
I'm fine, Paul, and getting some good weather so we can get out and about more and look at them skies.
Absolutely. And we did a bit of filming last week. We planned on a bit this week, but we've not managed it, have we? But Thursday soon comes round, and we've got an absolutely incredible guest to talk with tonight. I mean, this man's pushing for disclosure at the forefront. It's absolutely brilliant. But before we jump to Steve Bassett, let's just have a look. We're pushing 80 people in chat. This is really good. Thank you very much for support, guys. And it's rising all the time. So we've got Zero Dawn, Simon Riley, Yorkshire Puffin. Let's have a look. Ginge, Mike the Disabled Welshman. Let's have a look. Steve Collins, Susan Wiseman, John Paul Boddy, Andrew Sheehan. Well, we've done Stuart Collins, Dragonborn, Mary Sinclair, my wife. Oh, that's good to see. Don't often see that in here. Joanne, Karen Behrman, Jack. And let's have a look. Olgie. And I know that Linny's in. So that means Mrs. Linney will be in. Pete will be in. Mia Girl will be in. Rob Blueshift, Margaret Webster, Zeno. And I'm going to have to stop because I say it every week. And Kim King, Yorkshire Grey, because I want to just talk to this guest that we've got tonight, Les, because I've listened to podcasts and this man's name's come up over the years loads and loads of times.
Yeah. And I'm sure we're going to get some questions for our guests probably later on in the show. So if you have any, please send them through in caps so I can identify them easier. And I'll probably see you later on, Paul.
Hold on, Les, just one sec, because as I say, Stephen Bassett, Executive Director of Paradigm Research. And, well, the Paradigm Research Group, the man at the forefront of UAP disclosure and the first UAP lobbyist. What an accolade. So, you know, he actually is the pioneer. I don't know what he wants to be known as when all this is wound up kind of thing, but it's quite a claim, and it's brilliant that we're getting to speak to Stephen tonight. So, yeah, bring him on, Les.
Okay. There we go.
Hello, Steve. Great to see you.
Hey, mates.
Yeah, hey, mates. Yeah, it's great. And looking forward to hearing what you've got to share with us tonight. And our guests, we're heading for 140 people that are listening live now, and it'll just keep climbing. And where did it begin for you, Steve?
In a way, it began all the way back around 1961. In a way, I was 15.
Okay.
And among other things, I read, and I think it was Look magazine. I read the Look. I know I'll be corrected if it's incorrect. Look magazine article, amazing article on the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case, which is virtually, for me, the first exposure to that at all. And for probably most people in the country that saw that article, it's the first. It was like, what? Understand how long ago that was. And that case, of course, was championed by several researchers, all right, including the gentleman that hypnotized them, was substantive enough that it got legitimate attention, including this article. It was a serious and respectful article in Look magazine, 1961.
Well, that's 63 years ago, and that case is still prominent today, isn't it? You know, and
yeah, it's one of the most significant cases in the 20th century because of what has happened since, right? But when I read that article, I did not have a problem at all with getting the point, which is this really happened.
Yeah.
Now, why? I don't know. I had a non-secular life. I was definitely into science fiction, read lots of it, enjoyed it very much. That's what I liked. I didn't like the other stuff. And so for whatever reason, no problem. And I'm going, wow, this is amazing. They were engaged by non-humans, which means that phenomenon I've been hearing the odd thing about was real. And going forward, as I move forward in life, something would turn up here and there, whatever, relating to this issue. And again, I had no problems with it. And some of the stuff that turned up early on, going back in the 70s, it was kind of bogus, was pretty much bogus. You could kind of tell.
Do you mean that people had jumped on the bandwagon and were fabricating on the strength of the Barney and Betty Hill case?
Yeah, well, or just in general, going in late into the 60s, 70s, going forward for the next 30 years, I noted things about this issue turning up whenever they did. And I was always intrigued. I would check it out. I did not get involved at all.
No.
But what I remember the most is that with just basic common sense, you could pretty much determine whether an account, a report was legitimate or whether it was bogus. It wasn't that difficult. But that was it. Okay. Until 1995.
I was going to say that leads us into, and you're going there. You got John Mack. Is that where we're off?
Essentially, I noted but did not directly engage this issue and the phenomena from 61 to 95, 34 years. And that year was a year that I decided that I needed to make a major change in my life, that I was extremely unhappy, not going anywhere really, because I really wasn't doing anything I cared about, frankly. It's a problem that a lot of people face. I didn't have a family, which if you do, that's what you care about. That's what you focus. I did not have that privilege. And so I made a decision that I was going to do something dramatic. And what it ended up being was engaging this issue as a full-time. This was going to be it. But I had no easy path. I'd never engaged the issue before. It was late in the game, but I got lucky because one of the books that persuaded me to get into this was John Mack's book, Abduction. I read it, extraordinarily fascinated. Remember, this is 95 when I read it, so it's 34 years after the Betty and Barney Hill. And now here is a Harvard-trained psychiatrist with a Pulitzer Prize engaging this issue formally, setting up an organization called the Program for Extraordinary Experience Research, and interacted with Bud Hopkins. And so to me, what was obvious to me for so many years had just been, quote, legitimized. And so I'm going, okay, this is it. The game's afoot. This is going to be going. It's going to be the biggest issue of all time. I love this stuff. Let's go for it. And so I offered to volunteer. They let me come out. I spent 4 months there, which was wonderful, but it was not a fit for me. It was a volunteer, right? That's how when you volunteer and you can volunteer for anything. You go in, you do what you can. And if you're a fit, you end up maybe transitioning to a paid employee. But if it's not a fit, then you move on. Nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly cool. But after 4 months in, I had figured out what my role was. For a number of reasons, it was the political side, and I had come to the conclusion that the problem was political. It wasn't science. It had been scientifically proven beyond a reasonable doubt to me, right, without too much of a stretch. I wasn't having to stretch on this, and therefore, what's the problem? What's the problem? The problem was it was a political decision of the United States government and all of its allies, with the tacit inclusion of the Soviet Union and China, that this would not be allowed. This would not be disclosed or confirmed by the state. It was going to be completely classified and controlled to the extent they possibly could do it. It was a political national security decision. It had nothing to do with science. And therefore, the only solution to getting it out was a political solution. And I entered that. But how? I got lucky because I was aware. I'd spent many years of my life in D.C. I knew it well, that nobody had ever registered a lobbyist on this. Who would? So nobody's going to pay you. You're going to get laughed off the hill, right? But nobody had done it.
Is it somewhat a revelation the last 5 to 10 years, should I say, that you're actually getting the recognition you deserve for pushing forward with this? Because like you've just said, in those early years, you'll have been probably laughed at and ridiculed. You see me looking around, I'm looking for a pen.
Well, the irony is that I really wasn't laughed at much. Okay. I really did not take much of that hit at all, because the way I went about things, I registered as a lobbyist, yes, but I wasn't going up on the Hill, right? I had a few meetings in the ensuing years, but they didn't go anywhere. You get some temporary staffer that sits down and looks at you blankly and then says thank you and leaves the room. But that's not the point. The point was this issue is incredibly important. And any significant issue of importance, particularly with national security implications, has lobbyists. Lots of them. Let's take the issue of nuclear war. Do you know how many lobbyists there are representing companies that are dealing in national defense, right, in which the nuclear war issue and the potential risk is one of the key things that they address? Lots of them, and they're very well paid, and there's lots of money available to, how would you say, provide to campaigns and things like that. But this issue, no, but there'd never been one. And so by planting that flag, I got the attention. In other words, being first in something is both a curse and a blessing. It is a blessing because there's nobody else on the field. You can just run up and down the field. There's somebody going to tackle you. And secondly, but it's also a curse because you are first. It's not going to be easy. You're not going to have people rushing forward to give you money to do your work or paying you. So I registered pro bono for about 6 or 7 organizations, which is why I named the entity, my sole proprietorship, I did not go nonprofit, as the Paradigm Research Group. That's what research group refers to. A group of research organizations that I registered pro bono as a lobbyist, even though I couldn't lobby. But it promoted them. But most importantly, it put a flag out there, and not surprisingly, as I expected, it took about 6 or 7 months when the Washington Post gave a call and said, we just learned that you're a lobbyist on the UFO issue and sequestered extraterrestrial technology. We want to send a reporter out. And they did.
This is 95, 96, this, is it, Steve?
97.
997.
Not too long in 97. They sent a reporter out, got a very large interview, got a very big photo. In fact, it's up on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, if you look hard enough. And they put it in the front page of the business section. And this is before the internet. Yeah. This is before social media, right? The internet is just, I say before, let me take it back. The internet is just starting to get going, right? Thank God. And so that was it. At that point, I became a thing. And not long after that, I attended the 50th anniversary at Roswell. I started my website. I had a website, and I started to get some attention. I didn't have any money. I had very little money. And so consequently, it was going to be slow going. And that's how it began for me in 95. But as I say, it was seeded all the way back probably in 61 with that amazing article. And years, 30 years, some years later, I meet the niece of Betty Hill. And that is, of course, Kathleen Marden.
Yeah, we've had her on
Truth and so forth. And that, in other words, and she's been in it for some time. The truth is a powerful thing. When it is denied, that is bad. And those that know that truth can be incredibly motivated to end lies, depending upon how important the issue is. And so Kathleen is probably, I'm sure she is going to engage this issue for the rest of her life. And of course, I have many colleagues that have done the same, now passed. This is not something you get into and then easily go, it was interesting, I need to move on. Once you're into this, you stick with it.
You're locked into it. When do you think, Steve, the actual lockdown of the truth, let's withhold this from the people, was decided? Well, I guess you're going to say I know, I think.
1947, formally. I say, let me put it this way. In terms of the public awareness, 1947, when Truman makes the decision to deny the Roswell incident, probably with the idea of thinking about it, consulting with his people and so forth, and then making a decision. I don't think he initially decided, absolutely, General Ramey, come up with some excuse, whatever the hell you've got. Where the people would never know this. I mean, they were caught by surprise. Truman was caught by surprise. And so that's publicly where it begins. However, there is increasing evidence that there were some vehicles obtained prior to that, crash events, not necessarily all in the United States. How many, we don't know. There's been allusions to a number of crashes. Ryan Woods has an amazing book out called Magic Eyes Only, second edition, which has now got 115 crashes in there. Not all with the same degree of evidence, some pretty slim, some strong. So if there were any crashes prior to 47, given the circumstances, there was a war, you may recall, they were just totally kept tight.
I see.
No exposure really at all, nothing leaking out, really no news.
And do you think it's to protect the public or to cover the technology?
There are many reasons for why it's been classified and embargoed. Many reasons, not just one. However, the fundamental driving force for the truth embargo is the not coincidental connection between this phenomena and the creation, testing, and dropping of atomic bombs in 1945. That is the most significant connection that is going to be emerging soon enough in terms of the overall phenomena and its history. It's not, there are other connections, but this is the most important for a number of reasons. But one of those reasons is that the dropping of those bombs and the policies that were instigated by the West, the victors, or put it this way, the victors of World War II, led pretty quickly to what I think the experts within our national security apparati concluded would be a Cold War. It would be a nuclear arms race. And so with an imminent nuclear arms race, almost inevitable, including missiles, right? Because we were building missiles and they were building missiles. It was obvious that we're going to, not build missiles and not put atomic bombs on them, right? But for most of the early years, it was planes. They made the decision that given the unknown course that this nuclear arms race was going to take, would it last a short time and then we'd come to our senses? Could it lead to nuclear war? Whatever. It's the nuclear arms race. If you put aside the ET engagement of us in this way, probably the most significant event in human history. Nothing compares to it. And so they made the decision that given that there was a limited, they had X amount of control over whether there would be a nuclear war or not. And they were building computers as fast as they could to try to game it. And those computers got better and better over the years. So they were able to game out all the ways it could happen or not happen and how it would go. This was beautifully rendered in a movie called War Games. That the ET reality was such a powerful variable that to have that in the public domain and then working its way into the mindset of not only the world's people, but also the world's leader and all of the they could not be sure what would happen. It's a classic case of unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
They would only find out what those unknowns were if they ended the truth embargo or revealed this to the world so that the world could digest it. And so they made the decision, we're not going to do that. And so the nuclear arms race was absolutely the number one driving force to maintain what I came to call the truth embargo. And I am not criticizing him for that. I've said it many times. If I were Truman or Ramey or anybody in a cabinet back then, I would have probably made the same decision. It wasn't a hard decision. The problem with the truth embargo is not that they started it or that they maintained it through the worst of the Cold War, is that they simply maintained it too long. It's past its shelf life. And you know what happened when foods get past its shelf life and you eat it?
Rot.
You get really sick.
And obviously, with the new president in place now, do you think that will affect disclosure?
Every new president has affected disclosure. And here's what my friends in Britain need to know. There have been 14 presidents since Roswell. 14 presidents, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily 14 presidential terms, but 14 presidents, 14, as it happens, men. And every one of them, history is going to show that every one of them knew that this was a real phenomenon.
The reality. Yeah.
And I think that it was extraterrestrial, though still something that a lot of people just can't embrace for some reason. Star-to-star travel is really a bugaboo for a lot of people. They just can't, they can't accept it. It just drives them crazy. On the other hand, you talk time travel and they're going, yeah. They could be from the future or multi-dimensions. Yeah, they're from another dimension, but you talk star to star and they go, I have my theories about that. But in any event, can
we not just accept that these things are coming here and that they're actually amongst us and visiting? Do we have to say it's extraterrestrial, it's interdimensional? Well,
at minimum, and this is a term that I'm using somewhat these days because I don't want to. Sometimes I like to stay at a more central zone, depending on who I'm talking with, because I'm dealing more with, I think, I've always been dealing with media, but I've had some Hill time. I'm going to be doing some lobbying, actual lobbying very soon up on the Hill. I use the term technologically advanced non-humans. Okay. And that is about as straightforward as it can be. In other words, they're not a breed of chimpanzee in Africa that developed nuclear weapons or computers or any other animal on this planet. So they are a species and they're technologically advanced and they're not human. That is pretty much absolutely self-evident. And so technologically advanced non-humans is what is soon going to be disclosed. And whether or not they're going to early on state where they're from, I don't know. But I don't think that'll take long. And my money is on other star systems for these reasons. One, in the ancient times, where is a huge amount of research that has been done looking back through all of our archaeological history to just factor in the ET possibility, which up until not that long ago simply wasn't done. Though it was, it was starting to happen in the 70s, I think, late 60s, 70s, but now, huge amount. And when you do, you go back, as you can watch on Ancient Aliens, there's several hundred of those shows online. The evidence for this non-human, technologically advanced non-human engagement is all over the place, everywhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so this fundamental idea, technologically non-human, goes back. And when you study that, the people that have studied that, they keep bumping into evidence that points to the fact that these entities, whoever they were, maybe not the same as those that are engaging us now, could be completely different, said they were from the stars. That's what they were telling the humans, we're from the stars. And the humans represented that in every way imaginable, right?
Yeah.
It gets better because of the, God knows, hundreds of thousands. I'm serious now. Hundreds of thousands of accounts of contact, right, from people of our time, right, this century. Hundreds of thousands of accounts which have accumulated. I'm not saying everyone has been researched and put in a book. That's in the hundreds, but the number of people that have come forward with their personal accounts to researchers, mostly by mail and email, is in the hundreds of thousands.
Absolutely.
They constantly talk about how these ETs, at some point or another, tell them they're from the stars. Hello, right? I mean, really? All right. How much do you have to hear? And so, and they could be lying. It could be they're really from another dimension, but they don't want to upset the contactee, so they say, well, we're from the stars, we don't upset them, or as they put them on a table to do examinations. So my money's on from the stars, and frankly, that is what we want. Absolutely, that is what we want. We do not want them from out of time, and we don't want them from another dimension. I assure you, that is a far more problematic and upsetting explanation than another planet with life that became technologically advanced. So
Okay. Yeah.
That's what we're going to learn.
So why this is not a trick question, this, Steve. Why do we need disclosure? Why can't these other intelligences reveal themselves to us? Why do we need some presidential announcement?
Gee, thank you for that question. I do 4-hour lectures on the answer to that question.
Oh, well, we have got 4 hours.
So, folks, order some pizza. Can you order pizza in the UK? I think you can.
Oh, I think we can, yeah.
Yeah, have it delivered. I get a little better each year at trying to boil this down to a few.
We're going to say, let's condense it.
Yeah. The central aspect of this issue that affects the most things in terms of decisions by the government and so forth, and maybe even the nature of the ET engagement, what the ETs are doing, is the connection between the modern activity that exploded back in the mid-40s, 1940s, and the nuclear arms race. These things are literally locked together, all right? Now, it's not the only thing going on. There are really two fundamental things happening, as far as I'm concerned, within the context of this issue going back to the 1940s. One is that the use of those bombs somehow caused them to change their agenda. Nothing surprising about that.
No.
In other words, I'm suggesting if we don't use those bombs, we don't actually drop them on other human beings, that the agenda might not have changed the way it did. Or if we'd not invented it at all, of course, that was inevitable. Physics is the same all over the universe. They would have understood that. That might have changed the agenda. If we'd have just tested it and then, I don't know, somehow resolved World War II and then decided, let's get a UN going here and let's just get this war stuff out of here because we're too good at it now and it's going to ruin everything.
So they know our intent is deciding the agenda of the other intelligences, the unknown others.
The fact that we drop those bombs changed their agenda. Okay, that's number one. And that became a major component of their engagement. But there is another component, which the simplest way I can state it is genetic. So there's a genetic engagement and there is a nuclear engagement. All right, these two, that's about the two words that describe it as simple as possible. Obviously, it's more complicated than that. And these two are basically separate. One of the things that I'm looking forward to maybe learning down the line is to what extent was contact of the type we've come to know taking place prior to 1945?
Yeah.
Were they contacting or abducting people and doing any kind of genetic work prior to 45? I don't know, right? And we may never find out. But the
data isn't there, Steve, is it? You know, the people weren't collecting and correlating that kind of information back then, were they?
Right. That's right. And now there are people that have done regressions, particularly people that do past life regressions that have come up with stories about people having contact with ETs long ago, even, and so forth. But it's pretty thin. Yeah. So that is a big deal. If they were engaging us that way, this genetic work prior to 45, then I hope we learn about that. In other words, how far back does it go? Or have they done it periodically? Means they engaged back 3,000 years ago, they did some genetic work, and then 2,000 years later. So I don't know. But we know this. After 45, things got picked up pretty briskly because, again, we have hundreds of thousands of reports from people that have had contact with ETs of I guess you could say, an abduction type, with a certain percentage, not abduction per se. You wouldn't want to call it abduction, but by and large, you're going to get taken whether you like it or not, and that's all in this time. Okay, so you got these two things going on, and are they connected? It's difficult to make that connection, but here is the best I can do. One is that they overlap in this way, in that when people are in the middle of a quote contact event and they've been taken up to the ship for,
I know what you're going to say, and the given visions and the go on then.
They are given these messages through, well, call them visions, basically telepathic images that they're, it's like, streaming. It's like watching Netflix, right? Here's season 1 of your awful future, and this happens a lot. And so it's almost like they're taking advantage of this other agenda, this other work, to service the other agenda, which is seeding these concerns in many, many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people about, the way you're going here, the way the human race is going, it's not good. You need to rethink it. Whatever. Okay, so that's one connection. The other connection is a little more sci-fi. Definitely good material for a screenplay, right? Call me. I'm happy to consult with any screenwriters in Hollywood want to go down this road. And believe me, there are a whole bunch of screenwriters writing up ET stuff right now. Let me tell you. We can talk about that later. But is that once we started the nuclear arms race, which they could have easily predicted where it was going to go, and it peaked, not in terms of risk per se, but in terms of how far we're willing to go, around mid-'80s, when we peaked at around 86, 85, 86, according to the platforms I look online, 86,000 nuclear weapons in the, I think it's something at that point, 7 nations, wow. Right? 86,000. Okay, it's
incredible. But no planet left.
6,000 on launch capability at any time. That was like the peak, and then we started to come down, right? So they would have known this, and it's very possible that they had been not dealing with humans that way. But once we started down that road, they decided we need to compile a lot of genetic material from the human race. We need to maybe create some human ET hybrids, because they're going to screw it all up. I mean, they're going to blow it all to hell, right? They're going to destroy the environment themselves, and whatever. And plus, they're going to radiate themselves, going to be mutants, whatever. So you're just trying to create a little stockpile. That's the sci-fi explanation. I'm not suggesting that that's where I'm at, but that's about it. You've got these two separate things.
Yeah.
And the easiest way I can put that is the genetic work probably mostly helps them. It's something they need to do. But the nuke connection is about, the nuke connection is about us, but it's also about them, right? So there is some overlap here, but we can call these two things, two general areas, the nuclear connection and the genetic connection. And then we're not going to be able to sort it all out until after disclosure, maybe even not until after open contact, to get the full details. I hope I live long enough to see and hear that, because it's a damn good story. All right. Yeah. But right now, as you probably know, the nuke connection and the political process is completely dominant now. At one point, the contact phenomena was dominant as it emerged in the late 70s and 80s through the amazing work of Bud Hopkins and Whitley Strieber. And others, right, that were dealing with the contact phenomenon, writing about it, became a big deal. You were having the films and the books and so forth. But as we move to the political resolution and the nuke issue has become far more important, the contact thing is kind of pushed back. It's still there, but it's off to the side. And the reason for that is not unreasonable. In order to get disclosure and get the political process to get it done, get the political process done, the contact stuff had to be pushed off to the side temporarily, because the politics and getting committees and getting witnesses and trying to get a policy change or legislation and all of that is hard enough on even standard things.
There's things that can be accepted and known, not and getting some people getting their head around the contact
Sure.
scenario is just not going to be possible at the moment, is it?
Just the presence of ETs was huge, and that's why we didn't get the first piece of legislation after until 2021. Well, it was signed for 2021, which is from 2021.
Right.
That's how long. So was that 64 years? 47. That's 74 years. That's how hard it was, and we were able to do that because of the focus on the national security aspects, the nuclear issue, and so forth. And with that, we were able to navigate into Congress, into the media at a level that put us to where we are now, trying to get the contact issue into the discussion, onto the Hill, into the politicians, into the various high-level media, was simply too much. It wasn't going to happen, and that's just realism. And so they have had to wait. Now, I am not afraid to talk about them. I'm not afraid to talk about contact, and I do frequently, but I don't sit down in front of a member of Congress or a high-end journalist and get into that.
Just before, sorry, Steve, go on. Right. Just want to draw you back on one thing, if possible, before you get into more of the disclosure. Like you said, that people who've been abducted, not always, but often they're given some kind of vision, or they're given knowledge of foreboding doom for mankind if we continue on this path. Well, surely, why would they contact Joe Bloggs and tell him this, Joe Average, and not some influential person like the president or the prime minister? And surely that would sway someone's opinion, or people higher than them. Why the average man in the street? I know you've not probably got an answer for that, Steve, but
I got an answer. Okay. I always have an answer. Right. Hey, I my job is to have answers. They may not be right, but I got answers.
Well, no, but what's your views or opinion on that then?
First of all, we do not know whether
they've been contacted.
Yeah, good point. We don't know that. It's possible. We know that there is no reason why a high-level person in an intelligence agency or the military in our country or another country couldn't be a contactee or an abductee, just like someone just working a job 9 to 5. There's evidence that is the case, and so I'm sure there are contactees within government, even contactees with security clearances, which is where they might very well learn a great deal.
But we see the effect that these beings, these other intelligence, have on individuals. Why would that make them immune to it?
The best conclusion that I have is this: that there is an ET agenda, without question. All right, they're not just.
That's where I'm going.
What are we going to do today? Yeah. This is a big deal, right? They have been engaging us maybe for a long. I say they. We have been engaged over many, many years, thousands of years, not necessarily by the same groups, but nevertheless, not technologically advanced non-humans, whether they were 4,000 years ago or whether they were last month. So they have an agenda, and the only until they tell us what that agenda is, or until the government tells us what they have told them their agenda is, all we can do is try to stitch it together from what we know. What we'll call the citizen science research community, right, knows. And they've written lots of books, as you can see behind me, and that's a tiny fraction of the total number of books that have been written on the subject, I can assure you. And here is the best conclusion that I can come up with, is that there is a protocol that they follow. In other words, they're not making it up as they go. There is a protocol to how they engage less advanced species. One of those protocols clearly does not prohibit gathering genetic material, creating hybrids, taking people in to examine them, whatever, track them. That is not precluded, all right? It doesn't preclude turning off our nuclear weapons. It doesn't preclude being seen often, not just often, millions of times over the last 70 some years. It doesn't include that. It seems to preclude, obviously, landing on the White House lawn, and extremely overt engagements that would trip a switch. Now, this switch has turned up in our sci-fi films forever. We know what that switch is. That switch was flipped in our entertainment industry all the way back in 51, I think. Might have been 52 or 51 with the legendary film. Oh God, having one of those memory holes.
Well, I don't know it, but I can't.
No,
I don't know the name.
The Day the Earth Stood Still.
The Day the Earth Stood Still, yeah.
I'm not that old yet. Okay, which was remade with Keanu Reeves. I love the remake. So The Day the Earth Stood Still was about that. Okay, I think he landed in Central Park, which is that's almost as good as the White House lawn. And then, Zorg or whatever the name of that thing was, Brock comes out there, pretty intimidating. This switch has not been pulled by the ETs yet. All right. And so that is a protocol, which means that there is a way that they expect things to go. And without getting into more complicated explanations, the simplest way I've put it for 30 years is that under this protocol, before they can go to another level, we have to self-disclose it to ourselves. Not individually, fine, but that's not enough. There's 200 countries and sovereign territories on this planet, which now encompass 8.3 billion people, which is a lot of people, a lot of organization, a lot of difficult problems and issues. And so it is necessary that the leading legal authorities in all 200 of these entities needs to formally confirm to their citizens that they govern, that they're not alone, that they're being engaged by technologically advanced non-humans. All right. And then once that happens, then something else can happen. All right. That is the best way I can explain it. Now, we get hints about this from various reports that come in from contactees and so forth, and some things that are discovered through research on documents and whatever, that point to, I think, open contact. Open contact is, of course, on the other side of that switch.
Yeah.
Right. When they're engaging us openly. Right. And to me, what sufficiently crosses that threshold is communications with authorities, not with your neighbor up the street, with authorities, heads of state, nations, whatever. And that communication is being conveyed to us. Right. We're told, oh, this is what they told us today. Right. This is what we learned today. This is what we told them today. That's open contact, whether they are physically present or not. And that has not happened. But I think that is on the other side of disclosure, and that is part of the protocol. All right. Okay. So that's fairly simple, fairly direct. It's not too complicated. And then the question is, why does it matter? Why are they going through this at all? If you take aside the genetic work, because I think they have the capability, if they wanted to conduct the genetic work very, very discreetly. Meaning, we don't know, we can't catch it. Memories are completely blocked. None of them come unraveled or whatever else. They can just do that and do that, but they're not conducting it.
Do you think the way that they're conducting it then is deliberate?
They're allowing that activity is being allowed by them to contribute to this other process that ultimately leads us to that global self-disclosure event, okay? Which is obviously going to follow a huge amount of public awareness, which is the way it's worked out, which was obviously fed by the invention of television, and then the invention of the internet and the invention of the iPhone and everything else, until now we have this massive communication situation. And so the question is why? Okay, why does it matter that we get to a point where we acknowledge them, right? And if it matters that we acknowledge them, why don't they force it? I mean, literally slam it, okay? And the explanation I've given on many podcasts, and I suppose I should write a paper or something, but I tell you, I can't even sit still long enough to barely write a letter. That one, we have to get into open contact. Two, it should be as minimally disruptive as possible. Call this responsible, call it, kindness, whatever. That it should happen in a way that is minimally disruptive. They don't have much to gain by turning our world upside down. And so the 75 years, what is it now? 70, almost 78 years of this thing just moving forward on pretty much on our time schedule, though with clearly some assistance from them, is not too long. All right. But ultimately, we're going to disclose. And if we disclose in the way that I anticipated, it's going to be minimally disruptive. It's going to come out exactly like that. That's good. Okay. Then the second question is, okay, we've actually finally acknowledged their presence, which we could have done any number of times over the last, again, the likelihood was very low right up until around 1990 is when the door really opened big, but we still couldn't do it. That's all right. So then what? Then what? And I have stated that then what is open contact, right? Going forward, just with everything the same, meaning we disclosed it, but there's still no open contact. They're just going about their business. That doesn't make sense. For one thing, in a world where all 8 billion people, give or take, had confirmed to them that we're not alone, that this ET presence is real, also confirms contact and abduction. Instantly, like that. Every contactee in the world just got validated. Boom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So call me crazy, but the list of things that we could do to interfere with that work is not a short list. The only reason that those measures have not been taken is because the government, of course, has denied that anything is happening. But once, and that is going to impede any government intervention. It's going to impede a lot of civilian potential intervention. And so people are on their own, they tie themselves to the bed, they set up a camera, whatever the hell. Doesn't work. But it's a different ballgame post-disclosure. And so that's going to be a problem unless, and I'm going to put my money on this one, once we get open disclosure, formal, worldwide, I think abduction stops. We shall see. All right. So the disclosures happen. What next? And the only what next that makes sense is open contact. And the reason it shouldn't be delayed, it'll be quick. And you may say, well, why not the next day? So we disclose it on Monday and say Wednesday, they go, okay, you've done it. Here we are, ships everywhere, whatever the hell. No, because that would be irresponsible. That would be disruptive. Okay, the ETs are here, and then 2 days later, they're all over the place. People are running around, their hair's on fire, jumping in, to the local creek or hiding under their cars, whatever. No, I think the world needs a little time to digest it. Okay, now we've got the means to do that. In terms of a self-educating situation, it couldn't be better. Okay, everybody's got a phone. Everybody's got an internet. Anyway, pretty much everybody in the world is connected one way or another. And so educating the world about this issue will not be hard at all. And so, not that it isn't happening now. It is.
You've just done it. I was just going to say, we subliminally, we are getting fed this information already, aren't we?
Sure.
Films,
the books,
games,
documentaries. Yeah. But that's not the same thing as post-disclosure. Post-disclosure, we're going to get a formal education because what the governments know is going to come out. That's going to be provided to us. Everyone is to be able to go back and review all the work that's been done by the citizen scientists and researchers and journalists that work for nothing, basically, and sacrificed greatly, while the governments are going, you people are wasting your time. You're so silly. Take that tinfoil hat off. Yeah. And that's all going to be reviewed. And so the world is going to self-educate and get itself a PhD in the post-disclosure world. And after about 2 years, tops, we got it. We're going to graduate, get a diploma. In which case, open contact would then be far less disruptive. All right. And so that's why it would happen that way. Now, but why 2 years? Why not just, let us, we know, fine, study, do whatever you want. We'll just, stay back. Maybe the abduction will stop. But is there a timeline at all? Is there another timeline here that's affecting their agenda? And there is. At least I assert there is.
Go on.
Not too many I think I'm the only one that's really put this out there. I think maybe, I don't know if I've ever seen any researcher. Well, I haven't read all the books, so it could very well be in a book. Absolutely. I haven't even read all of Richard Dolan's books. That's because he writes so many. That we, they're able to travel between the stars. Our government's known that for a long time, which means we know it's possible. And nothing motivates research into science like knowing it's possible. All right.
Yeah.
You may not know how to do it, but you know it's possible. And therefore,
you're going to drive towards it.
That's right. Unlimited funds, whatever. And so for the last 70 some years, at least one or more governments has been doing everything they possibly can to understand how not only do they operate antigravitically within our atmosphere, but how they might have gotten from another star to here. All right. These are not necessarily the same. I don't think they're the same. I think it's two different technologies. So, and the second one is the tough one. The antigravitics is easy because we've had many craft, and I think we have solved the problem. I think we have either learned how to fly some of these vehicles that were gotten intact, or maybe we've even built versions of our own. I'm putting my money on that. All right. But star to star requires more than just a crash vehicle. It requires understanding more about time and space than we currently know. Our understanding about time and space is limited to relativity theory and quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics goes way, way down to the lowest levels of reality, and relativity primarily corresponds to the very large reality, essentially the entire universe. There's attempts to try to find a connection between the two. That's high level science.
Are we at a level where scientists, not Paul Sinclair, are we at a level where we would understand that knowledge if it were imparted to us?
We're this close.
Really?
We're this close. If you want to really delve into delve into it, the physics of this stuff, I can't even. I read some paragraphs and stuff on this. I can't understand maybe 2 words in a paragraph, and I have a degree in physics,
right?
Ancient degree, all right. But in other words, we are intensely trying to understand the limits of relativity and time-space, because it's clear there's more to it than what we know, and that the ETs know that, and that's how they move around. They are not moving around relativistically, at least as we know relativity. And as the incredibly great movie Interstellar, one of the all-time great of all times. God, I would love to meet the director and producer. Interstellar makes clear that relativity has 2 problems: time dilation, okay, for one thing, and energy needed to get to high speeds. Well, mass increase, time dilation, and mass change. These 2 things on paper make star-to-star travel impossible. And so you have 2 universes in the sci-fi world, where star-to-star travel is possible, where it's not possible.
It's not possible with the knowledge that we have now.
Exactly. Or not possible at all.
Okay.
And one of the recent sci-fi outputs that I can't wait for season 2 is from a Chinese science fiction writer that was made into a series called The 3-Body Problem. And in the 3-Body Problem is a sci-fi interpretation of the future in which the workaround of relativity is not there. Okay. Interstellar is also limited to that. In order to get around the relativity problem, they use a very favorable wormhole that just happens to be parked out near Jupiter, and that allows them to kind of jump into a relatively nearby civilization. It's cool. I have no problem with that. But of course, you have plenty of sci-fi films. You know, the whole Star Trek series is built around the fact that we can work around relativity. It's called warp drive. So I'm 99% certain there is this workaround. Okay, now, why does that matter? Oh, does it matter big time? All right. They can get from there to here, which means that eventually we're going to get from here to there. Any there, pick a there. There's a lot of stars out there. And so if we are close to solving the relativity issue or the time-space barrier to star travel, then they know that. I mean, I think they're able to project our timeline and scientific development down to the year. You know, they've been around, okay? And so if we are that close, that means that in a pretty short amount of time, we're heading on out where no man has gone before. And they know enough about us to know that there's no war. We're going there without carrying, okay? We're going to be carrying, okay? It's a free carry galaxy as far as we're concerned. And therefore, every civilization that we might reach, particularly those that are not advanced, is going to be subject to the presence of humans, which at this particular point in time, as far as we know, are the most violent animals in the universe. Now, the known universe, what we know. There may be more violent animals than us, but for now, we're number one. We're the apex predator. And that can't happen. They are not stupid. They're not going to allow humans to get into starships and fly out with their proton torpedoes and antimatter weapons or whatever the hell they're going to come up with. That would be ridiculous. We wouldn't do it. If we knew that there was another planet, say the Centauri system, that was about to go interstellar and be able to fly and even come visit us, and they were as violent as we are, and they literally slaughtered their own people, not for centuries, by the millions. Yeah. And we would say, well, you know, if they build the starship, I guess we're just going to have to hope they don't find us. No way. This is not even a difficult logical leap here. And so I think the timeline on their engagement is when we can build a starship, and we are very close. And the fact that we cracked relativity in the early 1900s, the fact that we, not long after that, got into the quantum level, all right, and of course developed nuclear physics and nuclear weapons in the mid-century. It's not that, you know, that's a pretty substantial record of technological advancement that you can then extrapolate forward. I don't think it's a tough call in there at all. They could probably tell us right now what decade we're going to have star travel. And I'm saying it could be within 20 years. All right. So what are they going to do?
But are they painting the timeline in front though? Are they giving us the tools to get there? If you're saying that,
maybe. I'm not a fan of technological exchange and ETs providing tech to us. If they have, fine. I'm looking forward to it. And even if they have, for whatever reason, but I can't think of any good reasons prior to, the 1990. But if they've provided tech that has advanced the time frame, that doesn't change the concept. In other words, they're going to intervene before we leave this planet, leave the solar system.
Do you question then, Steve, why there are so many crashed objects around the world then? You know, if they're so technologically advanced.
Let me ask you something. Have we developed any technology
that doesn't fail?
That doesn't fail.
Yeah, I knew. Yeah.
Look at the Tesla. Pretty advanced. Very cool. We fell in love with it. It's got issues. The more advanced the technology, to me, the more subject to failure it might be.
Yeah.
So we're assuming that advanced means foolproof. That is a fallacy. All right. It's also the case that this is simple common sense. Just because a species has got the ability to go star to star doesn't mean they are 50,000 years ahead of us or 5,000 years ahead of us. As I stated, we may be able to leave our solar system interstellar-wise within 20 or 30 years. So I believe we've had entities here that were maybe 400 or 500 years ahead of us, 4,000 or 5,000 years ahead of us, maybe 40,000 years ahead of us. But this mistake that people make of jumping, well, they got to be 1,000,000 years ahead of us. No, they don't. They just need to be ahead of us enough to have star travel. And so the point is simple, that the technological level of entities visiting us, let's just go back to the 40s, just go there, has not been universal. Some are less advanced than others. And the ones that are less advanced are more vulnerable to defects or being brought down or some other outcome. But I believe that there are ETs here that you're never going to get one of their craft. They're just too advanced.
Okay. I'll tell you what I'm going to do in a moment. If Les is around, just put a thumbs up, Les. I can see you. Do we have any questions? Are you okay for some questions, Steve?
Sure, many as you want.
Yeah. Excellent.
We have lots of great questions in the chat, and a good response as always, and a great show so far, guys. Thank you very much.
Well, I've had nothing to do. Steve's just an excellent guest. She's brilliant.
Yeah, I know. I'm a pain in the ass in that regard.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's easy. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, so these questions, some of these came in at the top of the show, so we'll just go through some of these. Stephen Collin. Good evening, Steve. Have you any interest in cryptids, etc., or do you just stay with the UFO genre?
If I'm not mistaken, cryptids, the term refers to more than just ETs. Am I correct?
Yeah, we're people who claim to have seen Bigfoot, strange creatures. Yep.
Yeah, not my strike zone.
No.
I pretty much, because I'm a political activist and trying to get to a political resolution of the issue, I have to stay in a relatively defined zone, which obviously includes, in terms of public discussion, contact, ETs and so forth. But outside of that, I just don't go. And not simply because it's probably not conducive to what I do, but I just don't know anything. I just don't know much. But that doesn't mean it isn't important and people aren't researching it, and that's cool. And whatever is real there, after disclosure, there's a much better chance of running it to ground and getting to an outcome that's legitimate. All of that stuff is in either directly or indirectly been subjugated to the truth embargo. That's why they came up with the word paranormal, which is a term I don't use because it's ridiculous. Nothing in this universe is paranormal. Every single thing in this universe is normal, completely, 100%. There's no non-normal stuff here. And dividing it up into normal and paranormal is an intellectual mistake.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, John Alexander, and a good question, I think, from John. Steve, do you think that the longer we go without disclosure from the US of A, is it more likely that it will come from another country, or could it come from a public source with a very strong evidence?
Can't come from a public source, no matter how much the evidence. And the governments have gone to great length to make sure that's the case. Plenty of very high-level people have flat out said there's a non-human presence here. It doesn't matter. Over and over and over again, going back 70 years, we've got, I think, Ryan Wood just came out with a book full of these quotes. I haven't seen it yet, but it's got hundreds, if not a couple thousand. So no, it's got to be formal disclosure from the heads of state. Secondly, yes, at any time over the last 70 years, another head of state could have essentially confirmed the ET presence. The fact that that hasn't happened is one of the most amazing stories in human history, which I'm hoping. I've made a couple of very short and ineffective efforts in this, but there's going to be a major series down the line called Truth Embargo, in which the entire history of this is going to be brought forward in a powerful way, sort of like the equivalent of Ken Burns' Civil War series documentary, which was great, only way bigger and way more important. It's an unbelievable story, but in any event, no head of state has done that, but a head of state is about to. And so don't be shocked if it happens. But right now, the likelihood of disclosure is eminent, and the head of state that will do it is Donald Trump. It's happening, literally. Now, we haven't gone into that, but let me just be clear. There is a host of stuff going on that is known. It's kind of out there. If you go to my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, go under projects ongoing, and go to the print media archive, you can see about 7,000 mainstream news articles. That's not it. You want to go to projects ongoing. Go down. Now you have to kind of slide over, going down to print media archive. Bingo. And then you punch through that big link there, right in front of you. Archive link. Click on that. Archive link right in the front.
I think he has done. I don't think it's open for him. Is that right, Liz?
Yeah, I don't think it's updated.
Well, you clicked it. Now the archive, it says archive link right in the middle of the page.
Yeah, I've seen him.
Yeah, I've clicked on it. Unfortunately, it's not
working?
showing up on the stream, but it is. I have opened it into the.
Well, on the other side of that link,
I'll
just 7,000 linked mainstream journal articles regarding this subject just since December of 2017. The total number of articles linked there is 16,000. And if you were to browse those articles, just going back to 2017, you will see the whole history of the end of the truth embargo literally unfolding in real time. And I assure you, those articles don't cover everything that's going on. Now things are happening so fast, I can barely keep up. And so for those that are just going about their lives and picking up here and there, they may have this sense something's going on. All I do is follow this, and I can tell you it's not just something going on. This is it. We are, there you go, right? And as you scroll down that page, you will see the articles that are logged in for 2025. And so all I can say is that the issue is completely in play on Capitol Hill. We are fully aware that the White House is now aware of this, is taking advice on this. People near the president are talking about this, and the president is considering this. We also know it's all over to Congress, right? We've already had 8 hearings, 2 major ones. Another one is in the works. The number of people on Capitol Hill that have said that there's an ET presence, or they're pretty sure there's an ET presence, is now growing. It's hard to find somebody that hasn't said something. And so it's almost done. This cake is baked. We just need to pull it out of the oven. We're that close. Now, right. You may say, well, then why hasn't it happened? What's holding it off? It's not complicated. The situation now in the world and in the United States is extremely intense. In some ways unprecedented.
It's fragile.
Fragile. Pick all the adjectives you want. I mean, this is not a normal time. We've had plenty of abnormal times in the past, I assure you. But never in a world with 200 countries and sovereign territories, 8.3 billion people, 9 nuclear nations, and about 20,000 ever more powerful, or rather sophisticated, nuclear weapons. And the political situation worldwide is extremely fragile and unstable because the way we've conducted our affairs since 1945 has not been, how would you say, optimal. Which brings me to this point, which I haven't really ever said publicly, but I'm going to be talking about this. And this is something I definitely want your listeners to hear.
Okay.
And again, I'm not a political scientist, I'm not a historian, but I feel there's something to this thinking that's valuable. If you're trying to find two numbers that undergird just about every major issue that we're dealing with today, and have been for years, but let's right up to today, meaning pick anything, and you can backtrack back to these two numbers one way or another. These are the two numbers. And let me tell you, you could watch 1,000 political debates and political advertisements in the UK or the United States, and you probably have never seen a single candidate for office bring these numbers up. Certainly not both together, right? If at all. Number one, if you do the research, and it's tricky, it's not easy, because this is not an easy calculation. But if you do the research on how much money the world has spent on military, usually they say military, but really it's military, war, and maintenance, right? Defense, offense, military, war. Since the end of the World War II, don't even include World War II. In other words, from 1945 on, adjusted for inflation, which is important. Because while, yeah, it's a bigger number now than it would have been if you'd just not done that, but the things it was buying back then, or the things were a lot cheaper back then, so it's actually analogous. The amount that the world has spent on that stuff is somewhere between 150 and 200 trillion dollars.
Wow.
Now, that's the first number. Let's just go 150. Okay. Right. There's one institute that has a hard calculation of 62 billion since 1988. Right. And that's what? That's like 26 years, 27 years, right? But from 45 to 98 is 43 years. But let's just go with 150 trillion. Now, what is that? That's the first number. Now, here is the second number. The population of the Earth at the time we ended the World War II was 2.3 billion. The population today is 8.3 billion. That's 6 billion more people in 75 years. But it's worse than that. That's not the number of people that have been in existence since then. The number of people that the world has had to deal with to organize, feed, clothe, whatever, since 1945 is not 8.3 billion. It is 12 billion. Once you count all those born since 45. So in other words, it might even be 14, but I think it's 12. So it's like, yes, 8 and a 4. So in other words, since 1945, all of the governments, all of the extent countries and sovereign territories have had 11 billion people. I'm sorry, 12 billion people that needed to be clothed, housed, fed, right? Provided basic essentials, organized, dealt with. 12 billion people, all right? And guess what? The amount of people that have suffered from not having the needs that they need, not having enough food or clothing or water or housing or governance or organization or safety, the number of people that have not had that is in the billions. And the number of people that still don't have it now is in the billions. Yeah. 2 minimum, maybe 3. In other words, they don't got the basics. They are in pain. They are suffering. They are extremely unhappy. Okay. And one of the reasons that is the case is because $150 trillion was not available to deal with the needs of the citizens of these countries, because these countries spent it on military, war, defense, bases, bombs, whatever the hell you want to call it. If our planet, post-World War II, set up a UN, come to the understanding that it's time to end this nonsense we've been doing for thousands of years. We have our boundaries. We've got nations' boundaries. That's it. Let's set them. No more conflict. We'll negotiate any issues, but there's going to be no more wars. We're going to get rid of military, and we're just going to try to live comfortably with each other, not without conflicts, but certainly. That 150 trillion would have been available to deal with all of those needs. And not just that, but the environmental impacts of 8, 9, 10, 12 billion people. But it wasn't available because we spent it. And because of those two numbers, the situation we have today is falling apart. Countries are unraveling. Institutions are falling apart. The number of people begging on the streets growing. The rise of fascism in many countries. All right. The rise of terrorism. Because when you got a couple of billion people in hell, in misery, getting screwed, they don't all just take it lying down. And the access to weapons, of course, which are all over the place, since we've spent $150 trillion on seeing to that, is there.
Yeah.
So those two numbers have led to exactly where we are right now. You can trace everything back to that. And have we learned that lesson? Have we come to understand that? Hell no.
No.
Well, I was just going to say something there, Stephen. Ants and humans hardwired for war. We're never going to get out of that scenario. We're hardwired.
This gets into an interesting area, no question about it. And it's, again, when I say these statements, it's kind of matter of fact. I don't, if I projected any blame there, it's not really intentional, because in fact, this is exactly what you would expect. We're just being who we are.
Yeah.
The problem is not that we were what we are and it caused all this pain and suffering. It's because we have yet to figure out we need to change. We need to leave that behind us, at least at a level where we can actually make substantial change. All right. And so, let me throw this little tidbit out. Again, I don't have a PhD in biology or exobiology or anything else. Right. So take it with a grain of salt. But the physics, until we know otherwise, and I don't think we're ever going to learn this, the physics is the same throughout the entire universe, period. It's all the same. Same equation, same everything, right? And so the physics of planets is the same. Now, the planets may have different content. They may be structured differently. They may be larger, smaller, whatever. But overall, the physics is the same. And so the physics of life developing planets is the same. Probably, right? Now, where it gets interesting is, okay, the physics of any planet is the same physics that we have, but what does that mean with respect to evolution of life? Okay, it's hard for me to imagine, assuming we're not talking about outside influences. In other words, this is an actual intrinsic process. There's no outside influences of like ETs or something, right?
Yep.
The physics of the evolution of life almost certainly is going to be survival of the fittest, no matter where you are. It is hard to imagine life emerging, primordial life, on another planet, whether it's like ours or not like ours, and it somehow just naturally evolves until it gets really sophisticated and it can make computers through a process other than natural selection, which means that for an extent, advanced technological civilization to exist on a planet, untold quadrillion times quadrillion times quadrillion life forms have got to compete, live or die, for millions of years. In other words, survival of the fittest. And
Absolutely.
by fittest means I ate you, you didn't eat me. Okay, it's that simple. And so we exist because this unbelievable number. It's a number that you I don't know how many 10 to the 500th power. Who knows? Animals of varying species had to compete and die in competition, and with very few exceptions. I think there's a couple of exceptions in our world right now, the only way you can exist is you have to kill something else. I mean, this is the nature of evolution, right? There are few exceptions, but very few. And so the human being that walks on this planet is a result of the successful killing of unbelievable numbers of animals right up until the present. Okay. And so violence, I think nature would necessarily call it that, but we call it violence because, in other words, does a lion, as it's charging down a zebra, think, oh man, I'm going to be violent today? I don't think so. Right?
There's a difference there, though, Steve, isn't there? There's a difference. We are violent for the sake of it. Is a lion violent for the sake of it, or does it do it just to eat?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so as you get to a level of consciousness or a level of brain power where you can do thinking at the level that we think, which is beyond the level of any other animal. There's a couple that are pretty smart, but they don't have the ability to enhance it much, right? Like they don't have, porpoises don't have colleges to go to. In any event, we got to a point where we understood these things. We understand natural selection. We understand the violence that exists in this world. We do documentaries about it, right? Constantly, right? About nature and how it happens. I get it, okay, right? But because we are advanced, the scope of what we can do well exceeds what any other animal can do. Yeah. And we take advantage of that. We can play chess, monkeys can't, right? Okay, so we do, right? And we can be violent, but we can be violent in countless ways other animals cannot even imagine. And so we built upon an evolutionary process billions of years old that is fundamentally, intrinsically violent as we refer to it now. It shouldn't shock anybody that violence is built in to what we are as a living entity and that we do it. Now, that could be called natural, and in a sense it is, but at some point it becomes counterproductive. Okay? So, if you're a species and you're so violent that you're able to create a technology that destroys every one of your species, you've just violated the survival of the fittest rule, either intentionally or unintentionally. It's a dilemma. And I believe that every advanced species on any planet that's ever evolved to the ability to make an iPhone has had to deal with this little dilemma, right? And so our violence and capability of violence kind of peaked around 1945. It certainly it went to a level that was way above anything we'd seen before, to the point where we literally could destroy mass quantities of people in the world. We called it, self-destruction, mutual assured destruction, and so forth. This was a milestone that could be viewed many ways. Politically, it was viewed as, okay, we've got to now have a Cold War. We have to develop massive weapons. Everybody's going to do it. Therefore, nobody will attack the other because it's self-destructive.
Fearing each other, yeah.
Unless somebody has an accident, a bad day, didn't wake up on the right side of the bed, that kind of crap. So we face that dilemma, becomes real at that point. Now, let's be clear. Not every human is as violent as every other human. But even the kindest, gentlest, most gentle vegetarian, because many people who are very, very absolutely abhor violence, step way back from it, embrace all of the nonviolent qualities, they're vegetarians, which means what? It means instead of killing animals to eat, they kill plants. Mm-hmm. And it's just a little less, how would you say, uncomfortable, right? To kill a plant. I get it. That's progress of a sort. Unfortunately, they're not running the world. And so this dilemma is built into this period when we finally have to confront this. And so what are we going to do? We are who we are. How do you suddenly make 8 billion people shed their entire genetic history going back millions of years that is built on incredible violence going on all the time in order to create a survival ladder that leads to an advanced species. How do you get them to let that go?
Well, they're not going to let that go overnight, are they? That's not going to happen, is it?
No, it ain't going to happen. And so guess what? I've just described as simple as I can an undergirding reason why we are having the ET era that we're having.
Yeah.
Okay. If there were ETs engaging the Egyptians or the Etruscans or whatever the hell, the Syrians, way back, Assyrians, this was not a problem. Now it is a problem.
Yeah.
And so that's all kind of coming together. And so we, at minimum, we will have to deal with this, but from the standpoint of the extraterrestrials, we're not a problem to them until we can leave the planet, until we can leave the solar system. And so they're engaging us now for a number of reasons, one of which, open contact and the realization of their reality, the realization that the galaxy is probably loaded with successful civilizations that have solved this problem, is going to help us deal with it, to accept it and start to make decisions about, we're never going to be able to stop somebody shooting somebody on a bad Saturday night, but that doesn't mean every country has got to spend trillion. We have to spend whatever. I don't know how many we spend a year now. It's somewhere in the range of 20 trillion a year, 25. I don't know.
So the realization of the extraterrestrial presence, then, do you believe that would temper us as a species?
It helps a little bit. It's not enough. Okay. But it's going to help as we reassess and start a worldview change. This is what Danny Sheehan talks about. It's a paradigm shift, but it's ultimately a worldview change. How big the worldview change is going to be, how broad it's going to be, how deep it's going to be, is going to depend on how more aggressively we engage the post-disclosure world.
Okay.
But again, the ETs are going, I believe, open contact. There is the number one issue on the table is going to be this.
Absolutely.
This is common sense, right?
Steve, I'm sort of cutting through your words here. Les knows what I'm going to say because we'll get caned for this. Can we address a few more questions?
We can, but let me just finish this point.
Okay.
Look, and I can go beyond 2 hours. So here's the deal. They're going to say, look, okay, you've known about us. Now it's open. It's not a secret anymore. Everybody knows. Okay, fine. So point number one, understand something. There is no way we are so stupid as to let you build starships and put nukes on them and head on out our way. It's not going to happen. And believe me, this is not our first rodeo. We've dealt with this before. Okay. Physics is the same throughout the entire galaxy. So you're not leaving the solar system with starships and nukes. And so you got to get rid of them. Or if you don't get rid of them and you actually put some on a nuke on one of your starships, or even build a starship, it's not going anywhere. We'll melt it down into some nice metal you can recycle or whatever the hell, right? But you're not leaving this planet. And this is a message that's been long coming, and now you know. So that's point number one. Point number two, how insane, well, not insane. We have a certain appreciation for the dilemma that you face. It's not unusual. It's happened before. What are you going to do about the nukes, right? Because they're not going to help you. They're not helping at all, right? People are starving to death while you're spending billions of bucks on these nukes. This doesn't help, right? And terrorists are going to get some. They're going to blow up a couple of cities. Who are you going to respond to? Whatever. You got to get rid of them. We encourage you to get rid of them. Get rid of the nukes. That solves the first problem and maybe opens up some doors. We have some tech that could be very helpful to you, and that's an understatement. We are willing to provide it. This is not shocking. We do it ourselves on our planet all the time. We share tech with those that don't have that tech because having that tech will help them do better. We'll give you that tech. But if you're going to keep the nukes, we're not going to do it. Why should we help insane people bent on destroying themselves? And so for those that are looking ahead to like, why do we care? Why should we even bother? Why should we pay attention to this lunatic right now is this. If you just look out 2 years from disclosure, which I think could happen in the next month or two, frankly, literally, I'm expecting it to happen, right? Literally. and that's another show. Give you 2 hours on that without even dropping.
We haven't touched on anything, to be
I
honest.
know. But again, this undercurrent understanding is valuable because the other stuff is happening all the time.
Yeah.
But nobody's talking about these larger perspectives that lie behind all this. All right. And so we may just be a couple years from making some incredibly significant decisions, which may include getting rid of the nukes. You get rid of the nukes, it's going to be a lot easier to get rid of the tanks. Once you get rid of and downgrade the militaries of this world, major, right? Suddenly, huge sums of money are available to address all of the issues that are creating endless turmoil.
Yeah.
And then if the ETs decide to share some tech, before you know it, 4 or 5 years down the line, we're looking back and going, I can't believe it was that bad. Things are looking really good right now. There is a positive future ahead of us based upon my interpretation of what's happening. Others may disagree, but I'm telling you, any reasonable, rational basis for projecting a positive future in the next 4 or 5 years, we need that. Yep. We need it. There are people killing themselves right now, usually with fentanyl. What can I say? It's as good as it gets. It's nothing more effective because they can't see the future. They've had it. They're done. I'm out of here.
Steve,
I'll take another question.
Thank you. Honestly, look at this lot. Not had to use anything. It's you just let you go. Just wind Steve up and he goes.
I can talk to midnights. What I do, it's no problem.
Right. Blue Shift, Rob. Go on, Les.
Blue Shift, yeah. Steve, do you think To the Stars was part one of the mainstream scripted narrative, along with the, I don't know if I can get this out, 17th bomb drop on what's forced TPTB? I don't know what that acronym is. Somebody help me out with that.
And as we know, the College Elite are never going to give away any info.
This is a truth embargo phenomena. Look, the truth embargo, denying the very essence and fundamentals of all this, is similar to the problem in science. You've got some phenomena that's happening. You have no idea what the hell it is. All right. But it's important and you got to figure it out. And so you begin a scientific inquiry. And all scientific inquiries are based upon theories. In other words, you have to develop a theory that may explain it, and then you investigate the theory. And if it comes to a dead end, and the government's not interfering and screwing up the evidence or whatever, then you go, that's not going to work, and then you go down. And generally in science, you may have 4, 5, 6 different theories about a scientific phenomena going on at the same time. And one of them finally nails it down. That's been confirmed. You have the truth about that. And then you move on to other stuff. This is literally how we built the modern world. It's very effective. It's called the scientific method.
Yeah.
But, outside of science, it's very much the same thing. All right. Yeah. And so you have not a phenomena. You have events, historical events, processes that have very significant implications for people. All right. And the government chooses to hide it, to classify it, to make it inaccessible, or to pollute it, to undermine the ability to understand the history of what happened. Essentially, once the government does that, it opens it up to the rest of us to come up with theories. Okay? Just like in science. Nothing wrong with that. And so when it comes to the truth embargo in the history of the last 70 years, because of the nuclear arms race, the massive buildup of militaries, the massive buildup of the most vast intelligent complexes the world has ever seen, and the amount of secrets and everything, what we have is a vast number of theories, none of which can be resolved. And so all that means is more theories. And so the situation is this. Something happened in 1954. There are 43 theories about what that was. Some of them are in the deep state. Some of them, are hidden there. Some of them are in QAnon. Some of them are on Reddit, whatever the hell. There's all these different theories being put forward. But they can't be resolved because the government is deliberately blocking your ability to resolve it. And so every theory has as much value as the next one. Same thing in science. you've got 7 theories with respect to a phenomena, one should not say, oh, well, that theory is better than this one. You pursue it, you try to get the evidence, you try to confirm it. And so we have this huge panoply of stuff out there about this happened and that happened that are being put forward, seriously, with good intent. This is what happened. There's this and that and that and this and that and everything else. But can they run it to ground? Has it been confirmed? Has it been locked down? No, it hasn't. And so this serves the truth embargo, because if we are all chasing theories around and around and around and never arriving at a conclusion, never arriving at an outcome that is absolutely solid, the government's got a free pass, right? It's got a free pass. It can just go and do whatever it wants. The more secrecy it makes, the more theories we have, the more we waste our time. Now, I say waste our time. That's not a criticism, because if you're pursuing some theory that may end up being total nonsense, but whatever, that's not your fault. That's the government's fault. It's the same thing. If you had 7 theories about, I don't know, quantum mechanics, right? And the government didn't want you to get to the bottom of quantum mechanics. And so you started polluting the evidence, keeping stuff away, locking down certain scientists. Hell, we'd never learn about quantum mechanics. And so it would be wasting our time. And so the truth embargo, at minimum, is a vast waste of our time. Not to mention the problems and the contentions and the anger and everything else that goes on. It wastes our times. It makes us look like idiots at times. But I don't blame anybody, any citizen, or their theory, or where they go to find it. There's one culprit here that is preventing us from understanding what is going on matter-of-factly, and that is the government of the United States and every other government on the planet that supports the truth embargo, either as allegiance to us or because they're authoritarian states and they don't want anybody to know the truth about anything. So they're the culprits, and that until we deal with that. I
don't ask a question because your answers are so extensive, and I'm going to let these people in chat ask you a few more. Then,
Steve. Yeah. And just before we do that, Paul, I just want to bring up a conference that you're going to be talking at. So a little bit of advertising for Paul.
Oh yeah, the Awakening Conference, 17th of May. Steve Mira, Barry Fitzgerald, and Camilla, Nick Kyle, and Sarah, and Ian Linford. And yeah, it's just a one-day event this year, and unlike the previous years. And yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting everyone there and sharing the information and doing what we do. And should be a great day for everyone. And I know you've spent lots of time at conferences and spoken at loads of different venues yourself, Steve. So you know the format with those things.
Yeah, and you've got a few books for sale, Paul, and tell us a little bit about these.
Yeah, well, the Truth Proof books, it's pretty simplistic. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and The Night People, which is about my own experiences and what's put me on the path that I'm on now. All available via the truthproof.uk website. You'll find lots of reports on the website that are all first-hand accounts, people's experiences, and so you can get the paperback books there, and you can also get them on Kindle, plus our documentary, Wolflands, which took me unless 3 years to make. And it's not UFO related, Steve. This is a cryptid type documentary, first-hand witnesses, and it's good. I would say that, wouldn't I? But it is good, and it's got kind of accolade from cryptid researchers and lots of different people who've watched the film. So excellent. And it was made on a shoestring, and it stayed in the top 10 of Amazon Prime for over 10 weeks, which we were competing with a lot of big name films. So, and it's still there. It's still on Amazon Prime. So the stratification tool on the website. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Stratification tool. That's myself and Dr. Martin Abbas, and we're just wanting your reports, experiences, abduction related, UFO related. And there's a lot of detail in it. Martin's put a lot of detail into that, even to the point we want to know what you've been eating and all sorts of things. See if we can see some patterns and correlations. But I'm facing a man here, Steve Bassett. He knows we want a vast amount of data to actually see any patterns forming in the research. So please look on the website, truthproof.uk, and fill in the form and send it to us. And over to Steve now then, Les.
Okay. Are you ready for another question, Steve?
By the way, the punchline to that last question was, look, I know about those things, but I just don't engage them. I kind of keep the focus in the areas where we got the strongest stuff, and hope that post-disclosure, all these other speculations could get resolved one way or the other.
Do you know, it makes perfect sense, Steve? Just one sec, Les. It makes perfect sense because I've said it many times. The cryptid phenomena, the subject of the cryptids is way behind the subject of UAP stroke UFO now, because I think it's an accepted fact that we know that they're here. But back to the question then.
Yeah.
Can you see that one?
I can see it. Yeah, sure. The government is in control. The government is in control of disclosure to one degree or another. The military-industrial complex is essentially the one that's managed the truth embargo by and large, and that's where the information is going to come from once we get the UAP Disclosure Act fully covered, and once we have disclosure from the president. And the idea of shadow government, why would they want to give disclosure? This idea of deep state, shadow government, all of this stuff is essentially the children of the truth embargo. Once you classify as much as we have, we've gone way too far. Once you abuse the trust of the public in that regard, once you start operating from you don't have a right to know, need to know, can't handle the truth mode, essentially you start people lose confidence in the government. All right, and they then have to, well, who's doing it, why, where is it, or they don't know, right? They're shut out, so by definition they can't know, and so they come up with whatever interpretation or theory they have. They come up with a name, call it this, call it deep state, call it secret empire, call it breakaway civilization, whatever. And this is the best we can do right now. And so I try to keep things simple. The United States government has managed the engagement of ETs on this planet for 78 years. Minimum, if not a little bit longer. And they are dealing with it in a classified way. We are not being told what they do. And they've been relatively successful in that program, but in the last 7 years, it's falling apart. And so at some point, they're going to have to let it go. And we're going to have to get a much more detailed account and ultimately learn everything, pretty much, in another era, which I call the post-disclosure world. It's that basic. And so whoever is running it is going to have to yield, right? They're going to have to yield it up. Now, after we get disclosure on the ET president, that doesn't mean that there aren't other stuff classified that we don't even know about that they're fiddling around with. Probably, right? Are they working in some underground facility on an antimatter weapon, which would be the ultimate weapon? If they figure it out, they could blow up the planet. I don't know. I'm saying that in a post-disclosure world, if we make the decision to get in the truth business, and the government realizes it's easier and more effective to be in the truth business than be in the lying and secret business, we may actually get a pretty clear picture of everything. This is not out of the question. The lying and the secrecy is fundamentally driven not by evil intent, but by the extraordinary problem that we created for ourselves when we designed, tested, built, and used nuclear weapons, and then stockpiled the hell out of them because most of the nations of the world still consider the rest of the nations a potential threat. This is something we did, we weren't forced on us. And as a result of that, we've had to make all kinds of accommodations to that situation that are only making matters worse. And so we need to get to another place. I call it the post-disclosure world. Danny Sheehan calls it a new world view, paradigm shift, all of that. It all leads to the same place.
But all of this, Steve, is based on a United States of America disclosure. What about Russia? What about China? Yeah, because they're not just going to sit back silently and let America announce to the world. Surely, I mean, they're going to want some say in this. It could actually disrupt world peace.
Absolutely. Well, it could be disruptive no matter who does it. But for the last 30 years, on God knows, probably most of my interviews, which is way above 1,500 now, I've said over and over again. I even went to Russia in an interview to REN TV, which is the most popular national network in Russia, because it has all the cool shows, Baywatch, whatever, and actually said in the interview, which is out there, it's on my website, I was allowed to leave the country, that Vladimir Putin could disclose anytime he wanted to.
Yeah.
Right. And I did it deliberately to find out what would happen if I said that on Russian television. Now, I do not know to what extent that was ever shown. I know some of my interview was shown. I don't know about that, but I do know that the Kremlin found out about that interview pretty damn fast, and I was allowed to leave the country. And so, look, if Putin or Xi Jinping discloses, they will be the disclosure head of state. They will get a massive political and historical legacy, right? That will elevate them on the world stage. All the rest of the heads of state will follow very, very quickly.
Okay,
the U.S. will be no better than second, which is going to make it that much more difficult on the U.S. government in the aftermath of disclosure to sort of explain, at some explaining to do. Well, let me tell you, it's going to be a lot tougher on the U.S. if we're not first.
So do you think there's a race for disclosure? I'm asking questions now, and I know Les is dying to get some of these audience questions here, but
it wouldn't shock me if it's starting to turn into a race. But I know this. I know that one of the reasons you're seeing a lot less from the UK is the UK government is well aware how close we are, and they're literally stepping back. You're going to even less stuff's going to turn up there because they don't want to get cut in line. They know it's coming. It's going to come from us. They're going to stay out of the way, and then they'll confirm afterwards. And I think all the other nations, which we would call the Western day nations, the democracies or allies to the U.S., are in fact well aware it's about to happen. They're not going to step in. That doesn't mean that Russia or China wouldn't step in. Now, there are reasons why they might not do that, but I'm operating on the assumption that disclosure is about to happen, and it will likely come from Donald Trump. And if it doesn't come from Donald Trump, it will come from Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping. That's where we are. It's that close. And so ultimately, long term, it doesn't matter. 100 years from now, it absolutely will not matter which head of state goes first. Near term, there are some significant implications, and I would prefer the United States go first. I have my reasons. It's not so much out of patriotism as it is out of a sense of what would be the less disruptive. Okay. Not so much USA, but it would be better if it was us first. And I could go into those reasons, but we don't want to go there.
No,
Can I just pick up on something that you said earlier? When open contact comes, you were saying that they'll have to lay, the governments are going to have to lay all the research papers, all the information they've got previous on the table, because obviously open contact is happened. Is that what you were saying, Steve?
No, I'm saying that disclosure. Look, the UAP Disclosure Act, which was championed by Chuck Schumer and announced on July the 14th of 2023, was the complete omnibus bill. It was everything. It had in it all of the necessary structure, requirements, and powers to get every single thing classified in our government related to UAP out into the open, into the archives. Every single thing. Not on day one, but over time. Certainly years. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. They probably have a number in their head, like it'll be at least 5-10 years. Whatever big the number is, it's going to be less than that because they can't calculate the pressure they're going to be under post-disclosure from the world. That's okay. And so that was it. It was all set up. Now that bill was cut in half because there were a lot of people who weren't quite ready. And they were concerned about some aspects of the bill, particularly eminent domain. And so it was cut in half. Then it was resubmitted again. Then it was withdrawn. Recently, Mike Round said he's going to resubmit it again. And so ultimately, and by the way, the initial bill is actually in play. We do have a UAP section of the National Archives, and stuff is starting to turn up over there. Go check it out. But obviously, it's nothing compared to what we're going to see, right? And so once the process starts, people are going to be very happy as long as they're getting new information on a very consistent basis. Even though they know some things are being withheld, there are mechanisms in the bill that controls that doesn't allow it to be abused. We'll know that something's being withheld. They'll have to report, and then it'll be reconsidered and then move forward. Once that starts happening, then the disclosure process is underway. We are in the post-disclosure world. I believe that well before everything is out, just in the U.S., not to mention other countries, because there are plenty of countries that have lots of stuff, okay? And they will be disclosing too. But well before we get to the bottom of that barrel, I think open contact is going to take place. And obviously, that will accelerate the process so that whatever's still left in that barrel is going to start coming out at an even faster rate. And so that at that point, we get in the post-open contact era, where not only are we being told about the nature of communications between us and at least one, if not more species, the history and the evidence and the secreted stuff is going to be pretty much coming completely out. And an entire history of this last 78 years will be available. And Netflix is going to do an unbelievable series that I hope I'm still alive to watch every single episode. That's pretty much where we're going. So yeah, I see open contact as not the after the full disclosure has happened, but as a result of disclosure being underway.
Do you think the general public, American public, have got that trust in the government for all these files and everything to be released under the Act, what you just mentioned, when we can't even get access all these years later to the JFK files?
Well, we're about to get we are getting JFK files right now. We're going to get an RIK, and so it just so happens that the very same people that are the point of the spear on the disclosure process in the U.S. Congress are also going after other classified stuff, which is, again, if you don't know this, the very first task force of its kind, called the Task Force for the Declassification of Federal Secrets, was created in the Oversight Committee just a couple of weeks ago. And they're already going after and putting out demand letters. They want to get all of the JFK, MLK, and RFK records, and that's happening. They're even going to go after Epstein's. And of course, on their agenda is also UAP. Not that that wasn't on the agenda already, but they have a task force now that gives them a little extra latitude and gravitas, and that task force has subpoena power. I guess.
So are people or groups going to be accountable? Because I've not said people, not be individuals, but as organisations within the body that is the government going to be accountable when this truth comes out?
Yes, to some degree. Look, most importantly, we need to know the truth. Accountability comes second. So expect a lot of things to come out. The matter of accountability will be floating there on the side. But I will be certainly making the case, look, folks, let's hold your fire. Let's get the information out. Let's get the truth out. All right? Yeah, because I can assure you, most of the accountability that you're going to seek is not going to go anywhere, because it's going to be under national security. It's that simple, right? It'd be like trying to hold the U.S. government accountable for building nuclear weapons. Really?
And most of it will be deeply historic, and
it's that too. So, but there needs to be. This is big stuff, right? I mean, the stuff that's going on right now in the U.S. is getting a little crazy and wild, and there's going to be a massive demonstration in just a few days in Washington. It could be 500,000 people here, whatever. That's big. This is bigger than that. This is as big as it gets, and so we need to keep a perspective on it. We need to get into the post-disclosure world. We need to start learning as much as we can from what all the government already knows, reassess everything the citizens have learned and discovered, and start to educate the planet about this new reality. And a certain amount of accountability may be called for, which is why I and almost all my colleagues support not only an amnesty bill, but a truth and reconciliation bill, meaning amnesty for those that have to come forward and talk, and then there's not going to be any consequences from that, and that's fine. But truth and reconciliation is stronger. This is for somebody that has to come forward and say, I was part of this program and I did a very bad thing. And here's what I did, and here's why I did it, and here's who told me. I've given you all the information. You will say, thank you very much, and you are reconciled to society. This is what truth and reconciliation is about. I think we may have some of that, but it will be a side show in a sense.
Yeah.
It's not central. We must get the truth. It must be worldwide. We need to understand what is going on here, and we need to increase and maximize the potential for open contact to take place. And so that's how I view it. Others, they want to go immediately for accountability. They want to file lawsuits. Blah 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 blah. I get it.
So but basically, it's not a name and blame game, is it? It's get to the truth at all costs here, and that's what it's all about.
There's plenty of other things to play name and blame. Let's face it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And do you know something? I know Les has said okay because he probably wants to get another question out. But there's the New Jersey drones. There's the new witnesses that. I know you're not going to be able to name necessarily, but there's so much that we've just not touched on. The 1952 UFO flap, there's the Foo Fighters, so much that I want.
Let me hit that right now. You ready? Here's the deal. Here's my take. Take it to the bank or not. It's your call. The entire flap, which we call the drone flap, was basically an extraterrestrial UFO flap. Okay. And by UFOs, again, that, ETs, I think, have drones. If it's not piloted, it's a drone. And one of the things that ETs can do is direct, the best I can refer to it as plasma balls. Plasma balls. Maybe there's something else. Whatever the hell, let's call them plasma balls. I don't think they have pilots, but they are directional. You can move them around. They've been around forever, right? They were the Foo Fighters of the 40s.
Absolutely.
They were the phenomena over the Capitol. They weren't saucers. Those were plasma balls. In 1952, they've been going on, and they're part of the phenomena, as are ships. Okay, because of certain developments, I believe, and we can get into it, but let's just say the ETs made a specific decision to launch the biggest UFO flap in history. Started 2 years ago. Kind of tapered off, and then came back with a vengeance in the fall winter of last year. They're everywhere. Did the ETs know that we have 300 million smartphones in the US, and that everybody's got a camera, and if you put plasma balls up there, they're going to be filmed? Does the ETs not know that there's an internet where you can upload all of that? And so these things are turning up everywhere. But it gets better, because the majority of these events were over military facilities, which you have to respond to. If they fly a bunch of plasma balls over the Rocky Mountains, who gives a damn? But if they put them over a Edwards Air Force Base or something, you got to answer that. And so they deliberately put the U.S. government in an impossible situation in order to force the action, I believe. The U.S. government was not ready to go there yet, but what the hell could they do? And so ultimately, the government of the United States made the decision. The only thing that we can do right now, as pathetic as it is launch our own drones into the phenomena. So when you're seeing these plasma balls, you're seeing some actual drones. And since you see some drones, and they're all drones, call it a drone flap, and see if we can buy some time.
We've said, I don't mean exact, not word for word, Steve. That would be a lie. But we've said the same thing.
Yeah, that's the best we can do. We can't say what they are. And Admiral Kirby was put in a position by a journalist, a woman journalist. She nailed him cold. It was the height of it. She said, "Admiral, are they ours? No, they're not. Admiral, are they other nations? No, they aren't. Admiral, do you know what they are? No, I don't." And then he scurried off. And I feel bad for the guy.
Les is itching to say something. Go on, Les.
Yeah, well, Paul will testify that we had a bit of a mini drone flap in the UK as well.
Sure.
We had no response from government, did we, Paul?
We didn't know, and there were American military bases as well. We got Laken Heath, Mildenhall. There were four actually. I can't remember other two, but we had it just the same. And I'd imagine other countries all around the world, to some degree, have seen the drone flap.
Biggest UFO flap in history, and I assure you, it generated a lot of action. One of the reasons we had the task force is one of the reasons that so much has happened in the last few months. They really put the pedal to the metal. And I think they made it clear to all the governments, UK and US, look, guys, our patience is not unlimited. Okay, get this done. And by the way, this flap is kind of still going on. Groups of drones are still turning up, being filmed and put up on the internet. And at this point, I think they don't even bother to send our own drones up into it. No. They've kind of given up on that. But if they were to appear en masse again over major facilities, they'd have to launch some more of our own drones up there to try to somehow keep things at bay.
Steve, we're almost out of time, and
Yeah.
so you kind of know what I'm going to ask you, because
Fire.
we've not touched on anything. Would you consider coming back on?
I'll come back. Are you allowed to go over 2 hours or some law or something?
We are. We
No,
usually close down
committed.
after.
Yeah, we're committed to 2 hours today, Steve.
We're kind of
Okay.
committed. But go on, Les. What did you want to finish on there, Les?
No,
That's
okay.
it. We are done, guys, and fantastic show. And yeah, I'm pleased to hear that you would be willing to come on again, Steve.
Anytime. Come
We
on
haven't touched anything. It's been a
We'll
pleasure.
probably pick up from where we've left off, won't we?
Absolutely. And thank you very much, Steve. And I'm sure everyone listening to this echoes the same. And we've held quite a big audience here, and not even touched on questions. I don't think I will, Les.
I can come back anytime.
22 left, and I'll save these 22 questions for the next time Steve comes on.
Let me leave
Okay.
your audience with this, folks. Look, support paradigmresearchgroup.org. Support newparadigminstitute.org. Support soulfoundation.org. Support the UAP disclosure fund.org. Support contactinthedesert.com. Right? These are just some of the entities that are in the forefront of this, and we need your support. Every one of these entities I just mentioned are nonprofits. If you're a U.S. citizen, if you're a UK citizen, well, sorry, but we'd still like to have your support.
Well, I'm sure you'll get it from our listeners tonight, Steve. Steve Bassett, thank you very much for giving us 2 hours of your time. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
You're welcome.